think the story of Weta Digital, as it's grown over the last 3 films, has been a pretty amazing journey.
You had this group of people who each year were just getting better at what they were doing. They were able to build on the experiences of the year before. The infrastructure, the organisation, the pipelines were all, the software that was being written was all helping the following year as a much stronger base.
Really, the first film made us able to make the second film, and the second film made us able to do the third film.
Pete was able to come up with even cooler stuff for the third film because of the heartache and hardship that Weta Digital went through, the 4 years prior.
Most facilities, when they get handed over one of the major blockbusters, it's a big show if you have 200 shots.
In the Fellowship of the Ring, we did 540 shots. For the Two Towers, we did 799 shots. And for the Return of the King, we did 1,488 shots.
What was most incredible about Return of the King as compared to the first 2 films was just the spectrum of work that we had to do. We had to cover not only creatures and characters, but environments and huge armies and things that got destroyed. Everywhere you were looking, we had to add something to the scene to make it real.
We knew early on we were going to have a lot of work to finish this movie in a year.
When you're in the thick of Return of the King with 1,500 shots, suddenly the 550 that we had on Fellowship seems like a picnic. We're working on the pre-visualization of the Battle of Pelennor Fields, which is, it's not really the climax of the Return of the King, but it is a very big central set-piece kind of battle.
Pre-visualization is kind of an advanced storyboard where you use a computer, you animate things, and you have the cameras, and you create a pre-visualization of each shot or each scene so that you can show the director, and director can make direction choices or acting choices before they're on set and have to commit to a lot of difficult visual effects setups.
Peter, Richard Moore, and Christian really had a lot of previs meetings where they sat down and decided how the battle was going to take place.
The Pelennor Field sequence originally started out with about 50,000 characters, but even as we started to lay them out in the environment, we realised the 50,000 was a pretty small number of guys once you put them in this huge, huge environment with a big city in front of them. So when Christian started laying out the battle strategy, we realised we needed quite a lot more characters than that. So as we started to increase the numbers in order to create shots that looked good, we ended up with, upwards 350,000 characters.
It isn't flashy previs that we doctor up and give, effects to and, run through any sort of, 2D compositing package. It's just fast, interactive stuff that can just get the bare blueprint of the shot out there for the people who really have to start doing the work and, start making it look good. I have these trolls sort of towing them in, and then they actually go around the back and start, sort of loading the boulders on,
Yeah.
And so it's just, the orcs are kind of cranking the machinery, and then
so
the trolls
go, yeah.
They would just sit in a room and quietly step through Pelennor Fields. And so what it was is they were off on their own.
None of us really had access to this little room that they were working at. It was sort of like a room in the Pentagon where the secret guys go and, create the bombs that no one else really knows or wants to know exist. And I think there was a big sort of feeling of that, of not wanting to know what the heck he was doing in there, because it could be really scary.
And then after a few seconds, the guys on, the commander guys can sort of be doing a bit of hey, and the things are one by one the guys are squashed, because that was quite effective. Rather than have them surviving, it's a way in which you could shoot blue screen guys who kind of do it, and you just put them in 2D on sort of CG horses and just very quickly sort of have them squashed. All right? Yeah, thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
We probably thought that we were up for about 50 to 80 shots in Pelennor Fields, and it turned out to be, when they finished on previs with the film, about 250 at the end of the day. And yes, things did get bigger and bigger.
Peter turned over the entire sequence of Pelennor Fields at once. And we hadn't seen a lot of it from the previs team, and so we finally got to see the full cut of it.
The turnover is us looking at the sequence as a whole so we understand the context of what we're trying to do, and then going through the shots shot by shot so Peter can tell us specifically what he wants in each of the shots. And we'll bring a crew into that room. We'll have the heads of all the departments, camera, model, animation, everyone that would benefit from hearing what Peter has to say directly.
And it was huge. It was all gray-shaded creatures, early stages of animation, and he turned it over, and it was just like, there you go. Good luck.
The kind of shots that Peter was sort of formulating for these things, it was almost, documentary cameraman riding on the back of a horse underneath elephant legs, and suddenly, boom, there goes somebody getting stepped on.
And instead of being really excited, I think they were just really overwhelmed that we were going to finish this, and we had 5 months left, and we had this huge sequence to do.
Everybody walked out of there the quietest in the universe. I think that was a turning point at Weta. Everybody just walked out of there and okay, we got to get busy.
You just leave this room going, what the hell did we just do? What is. It would take you a few hours to like come to grips with what just happened.
One guy sent out email that just had a path to this really long sequence, and he had 3 words: "Oh my God, ... We're just like, and then you hit play and watch it in the privacy of your own office, going, white knuckle at the keyboard.
So the big meeting, Peter comes in, conference room, we look at all the shots, everyone has, sticks in their 2 cents.
I remember that we were sitting there and we were talking about the attack on Minas Tirith more than anything, and what the armies were going to be doing, where they were coming from, where they all, played in this field. There was no such field in reality. And I can remember thinking at the time, oh my goodness, I wonder how we're going to make that. And I never for a moment thought that it would be totally a 3D environment.
Well, as soon as we finished post-production on film 2 back in November 2002, we started work with Alan Lee. I sat down with Alan Lee at a computer and designed Pelennor Fields.
The actual full Pelennor Fields doesn't exist and never did exist. So the only option that we really had was to create it in a computer. We created a virtual location. In fact, Alan Lee, drove a lot of the creation of the virtual landscape. He had the whole Pelennor Fields environment absolutely in his head, obviously, from the days of having to do watercolour paintings.
I mean, Alan knows this world so well that he was able to give us reference for the basic layout of where everything was in relation to everything else, defining the Pelennor Fields arena.
In order to create the environment, I basically created a map and some aerial drawings so that we could go into that 3D environment and look around and see what we would see from any direction.
We had to build these environments as environments that we could actually move around in 3 dimensions. So the whole idea of a map painting got extended into these incredible virtual sets. Alan Lee and Jeremy Bennett were our art directors on the show, and what they did that was really so amazing, which is where I think art direction kind of reached new heights, is rather than just laying out conceptually what they thought everything should be like, they really got involved in figuring out specifically what the backgrounds and the scenes and the environments needed to be. So Alan and Jeremy would get very involved with going out on location, photographing things that represented starting points that we could use for look or lighting or pieces of terrain. So we called those tiles.
They're basically a movie version of what people do with their cameras. If you're in a place and you want to take a big, long photograph of a whole vista, you shoot a series of separate photographs and you kind of join them all together in your album, like a montage. And we do that with the film cameras, and we just stand there with the camera on a tripod and we just photograph a lot of different places, and then in the computer they can join it all together and it becomes a sort of a cyclorama that you can use in the background if you ever need any more shots. Pelennor Fields was stitched together from multiple locations. Twizel was really the main one where we shot the live-action horse charging. We photographed mountains for the Minas Tirith Mountains. We photographed the Remarkables in Queenstown, which are a particularly jagged mountain range for the Mordor Mountains. We took footage of rivers that become the Anduin River, which flows through the fields. We shot endless amounts of photography of grasslands around Twizel, which form the grass, and we put all this together like a giant jigsaw puzzle.
And then it was my job, once those were kind of in place, to take these little bits and pieces of photographs and put them into a comp and build mountains, build hills, build connecting landscapes, build the Mordor Mountains, build a sky dome that sat around this whole thing.
we took all those elements and put them together as the background around Pelennor Fields. We shot probably about 100 skies around Wellington to try to come up with the right combinations of clouds and skies to get the dark Mordor gloom that just lived over Pelennor Fields for the entire length of the battle.
There was a point where the cloud would end, it came out of Mordor, but, a couple of miles either side of Minas Tirith, I think you'd probably see clear sky. And it certainly helped with conveying that feeling of depth in the environment.
Once we started setting up the lighting for Pelennor Fields and realizing that we were going to have this blanket of cloud that would allow light coming in from either direction, we quickly came to realize that meant we were going to have two suns on Pelennor Fields. So if we were shooting one way and needed backlight, we had sun. If we were shooting the other way and needed backlight, we had sun. The thing that threw us off, though, is those suns were in the north and the south, not the east and the west. But that's the way it goes.
You needed the bright background. You needed the contrasty foreground. The result was quite a realistic CG environment.
So it became this big flat comp that once you turn into a circle, it became a world that we could sit a camera in the center of, move it around, and see anywhere we wanted to go.
What that allowed us to do was to have the flexibility to drop in any kind of a shot that we needed. We could drop the camera down to the ground, or we could fly it above Minas Tirith. We could go anywhere in Pelennor Fields and set up our shots and make them work.
Peter told us at the end of film 2 that he really wanted to make something that just made Helm's Deep look like a mild skirmish.
The great thing with the technology that we devised over the years is that we were able to make continual improvements to it, and obviously the massive software that was written for Lord of the Rings was a good case, because we wrote this to enable us to have these computer-generated armies which would behave naturally and look natural and not look like they were replicated bits of computer programming.
Massive was really designed with the capabilities required for Return of the King in mind, dealing with hundreds of thousands of characters.
So I knew that it couldn't just be a simple crowd system for guys just running around and throwing things at each other, because I already had read the scripts, all 3 scripts, and I knew exactly what was coming up. Well, I knew kind of what was coming up.
A massive on Pelennor Fields went from about 10,000 Uruk-hai that we had in Helm's Deep to about 200,000 orcs that we had in Pelennor Fields. So it was a huge increase in the number of agents we had to have out there fighting that battle. The thing that got probably the most incredible was doing the massive horses for the Rohan charge, because we had 6,000 horses and riders.
When you're doing thousands of horses, you don't have enough labor and enough animators, good animators, to animate thousands of horses in these things. So you have to come up with some system that enables you to do that. We used Massive, but you still need to create that motion. And the way you create that motion is through a technique called motion capture.
When we're putting together an agent for Massive, so the horses, they have to do a number of different motions. In fact, for the horses, we'd scripted those 450 motions. So we'd have particular actions of the horse standing still, moving forward, moving right at 45 degrees, moving left at 45 degrees, rearing up, galloping, cantering, 450 combinations of those. So when you see 6,000 horses running along and doing different things, they're all looking like unique horses.
You've got orcs coming at you all over the place, so you can be interacting with each other and just moving around each other and trying to just hack and slash around you.
Once we have shot the action on the mocap stage, the motion capture team then takes the movement and refines it, just kind of irons out any kinks that might still be there. Then it will go to the Massive team.
The Massive horses would generally fill in the background. In some cases, you've got thousands and thousands of Massive horses in the shot, and it's all digital. You also have the secondary task, which was entirely animation, which was dangerous horse falls and deaths. These various violent actions, these violent horse takedowns, were then done by the animators, and we basically gave them carte blanche to go in and create exciting, dramatic, painful impacts. The good news was that no horses were harmed during this scene. The bad news is that a lot of animators were.
There was a certain amount of the sequence with the horses that we wanted to shoot real horses against green screen. A lot of them were CG, but some of them we wanted to be real. Some of them had actors on board as well. I was running out of time. I couldn't shoot all this material myself. So I thought the best person to shoot it would be Jim Rigel, who's our visual effects supervisor. And I thought, well, if Jim shoots it, he can't complain about what he's getting.
In retrospect, it was brilliant of Peter to allow us to do this because, he's on set. And, we always grumble about later, oh, it's elements, and we didn't have a blue screen, and now we have to do this, and look at that, now we got to get that, we got to roto her hair off that tree, oh my God. And he puts us out on the set. And the first thing we do is go, screw the blue screen, we're going to shoot just go for it, we're running out of time, let's go here, And he puts us, in just a small version of his seat.
So I knew he'll do a good job because he knows exactly what he needs to get to make the scenes work.
As sort of graceful and gentle as you can do the whole thing too, the better. So if you can just sort of roll down, Mumma Kill walks over and then get back up. I mean, you actually got up quite nicely,
So they took the previs cameras, and Jim and his crew went out and shot a bunch of live action horses and riders running through the set.
We basically did our best to sort of reference those previs to get the camera moves correct. So when I went out onto the green screen battlefield, you would know to follow a horseman for a while, and then at 2 seconds in, tilt up quickly to the sky, knowing that you were going to put a giant Mumma Kill in there that was going to swoop back down and take out the horseman.
And we'd be working till, midnight, 1, 2 in the morning after shooting all day, and then present them to Peter the next day, and we're like, okay, and then this is like, this shot is like this, and I was trying to find an element to work for here, and this didn't quite work, so he's like, not so easy, is it, guys? And he's right.
The live-action plate shots enabled us to layer in computer-generated horses and computer-generated riders, so when you see a horse stumbling and fall on a rider going flying, that's obviously a horse that was computer-generated and a rider that was computer-generated, but we allowed room by having the riders in lanes so that you had places to put these computer-generated horses and make it look realistic.
All of a sudden, a couple of those live-action elements mixed in with the CG and assisted, with massive behind that. We were like, that's real. The whole shot looks real now.
The Mumma Kill really come into their own in film 3. It's a little bit like Gollum popping up in film 1, and then you really get to know him in film 2. Pete held the Mumma Kill off for film 3, and we spent a lot of time getting those guys right.
Every department is working together trying to solve a lot of these problems. The animators have to animate the weight of it to make it look realistic. The creatures department has to give the muscles dynamics that look realistic. The shots department has to give it lighting to make it look the size that it is in order to give that sense of weight. The compositing department has to create big dust clouds every time that the Mumma Kill lands his feet on the ground. So it's a process that covers the entire facility.
Of course, one of the most extreme conditions was the shot where the two Mumma Kill collapse into each other. That was a shot that we'd worked on for months and months and months to get all the details right, because there was an amazing amount of effort that went into the animation and the creature work. When those two Mumma Kills collapse, there's bones breaking and muscles collapsing and just a lot of effort into making that believable.
That shot was completely done, in our eyes.
We were pretty happy with it. And Peter looked at it.
He said, he sort of said something he's never said before. He goes, And and normally he's like, not, fine. He's very vocal about it.
And everyone's mouth just dropped. Like, what are you talking about?
And Peter remembered a better angle. He spent, a long time with the previs guys, prevising what he wanted Pelennor Field's battle to look like. And he created these really nice camera angles of the action, and he remembered them because he obviously was thinking about it.
Well, it turns out we had missed one aspect of it, which was the camera move. In shooting the live action foregrounds for that shot, we got locked into a camera move that worked for the live action that didn't quite have the same impact for the shot the way we had prevised it.
You always had the impact right in camera, and it was dynamic and it was exciting, and somehow we tracked the evolution of the shot, and somehow as the animation was getting refined, they were scooting the camera in closer and closer until finally we're like underneath the Mumma Kill looking up at him, and it's like, well, of course, no wonder. The dilemma was like, well, what do we do? This reel's supposed to go out, We're going to have to tell people we're holding the reel.
This was 2 days before we had no more time. This was the drop dead. We worked for, I think, probably 6 months on that one shot alone.
We figured out that if we just went with a completely digital version of the shot and didn't use any of the live-action horses and riders, which we could do at that point because by the end of the movie we had the digital horses and riders working, that we could redo the entire shot. And Peter said, go for it.
Fortunately, at this point, we were near the end of the schedule. We had delivered a number of reels, and we had a huge resource available to us. We had all the top people that were there that had just finished that shot. So basically, we redid it.
So a 6-month shot turned into a 2-day shot, basically.
We had the radically creative impulse to point the camera in the right place.
We went back in and represented it to Peter, and he's like, that's the shot.
We had a meeting to discuss general ideas for Pelennor Fields, particularly to do with what we're going to do with the mimics, because just trying to come up with ideas for how characters could try and take them down, basically. How do you take one of these things down? It's kind of a big question, really.
There were some pretty strange ideas that people had, and one of them was Legolas doing an action like climbing up arrows on the back of a Mumma Kill. And Peter really took that and added to it and really developed it into the whole Legolas taking down the Mumma Kill sequence.
Orlando, is the new Errol Flynn. He's the new action hero. He gets very excited about seeing these Douglas Fairbanks moments because it makes him look very cool.
It was a trip, man. I was there, and he goes, "So I've got this idea." I love the way the audience responded to running over the top of the cave troll and sliding down the stairs and hopping onto the horse, and I want to have a Leggy moment that just tops all of that. He wanted this big set piece with Leggy on the back of the Mumma Kill and taking down one of these huge, gnarly beasts.
So they're all crashed and the ghosts are dealing to them. You then put an arrow through the brain of the bloody beast, and as it falls down, you go for a scoot down the trunk.
I think you got problems. Orlando totally convinces you that he really is on the back of this big thing.
And so we ended up having to shoot the entire Mumma Kill sequence with Orlando in one day, which, for its complexity is a very difficult thing to do. And we worked out the stuff we wanted Orlando to be really there for, the close-ups basically, all the way through the sequence. And in the space of a day, we quickly moved through and shot close-ups of him doing all the different bits and pieces that we needed them for.
They just basically had me wired around, and I was swinging and climbing and slashing and stabbing, and I was like, wow.
And we shot him, and then eventually Weta were able to extract him out of that footage and to place him on back of the animated Mumma Kill. And a lot of the most spectacular sequences in that Mumma Kill gag, the spectacular stuff is really Orlando as a digital double. And on the shot where the cage of the Mumma Kill is pulling over, he's a digital double as he rides the side of the Mumma Kill to the top, and then as the camera swings around, we just do an on-screen morph of him into the real Orlando that we shot during our pickup shoot on stage.
Ridiculous stuff, really. Ridiculous. It shouldn't work at all. But it's wonderful, because it does.
At one point, Peter said, let's have everything that we've got attacking Minas Tirith. So, of course, that meant trolls. These couldn't be the same dumb trolls that were, in the other films because we needed them to perform as part of the army.
People had only seen some rough previews and didn't really have a clear idea what was going on, and he basically wanted everything in the Weta digital arsenal to be thrown at our heroes.
We're back in the cutting room, and Peter's kind of, and I'm saying all this stuff, going, this is great. And all of a sudden Peter goes, okay, and then the doors burst open, and then it's Annette's worst nightmare.
Not only did Grond come through the door and we had, every creature that you could possibly imagine, not one of those shots was shot on a blue screen.
Basically, Weta's being handed a shot that wasn't intended to be a visual effects shot, and all of a sudden it's become one. Pete's like, oh yeah, put a troll in the background there. And, oh, why don't we see a warg over there? That'd be cool.
And I was like, oh my God, this is not just a little scene anymore. And this is October. He's turning this over.
Given how brilliant our crew was, they attacked them with a vengeance and did such a stunning job of them. But that is a production manager's nightmare, where you are given shots that weren't shot to be used the way they were, and suddenly you are absolutely having to unravel it and redo it.
Peter Jackson decided he had one extra scene to deliver that involved the troll. It was 8 or 6 weeks before deadline, and that kind of put me off sleep for a night or two. I was like, oh God.
Basically, the orcs start pouring in. Peter said, well, I'm going to make these optional, but I thought it'd be really cool if we had some really big battle trolls. It's all optional. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. It's like, what do you mean we don't have to do it? Of course we have to do it. What does optional mean from Peter Jackson, you know?
And we would joke about it. Can we choose other optional shots, you know? No.
We're so used to, you know, the way Peter turns over, that it wasn't even daunting, really. We just were like, okay, we'll do that.
And he's right. That's the thing, is he's always right. You know, that's why you can never get angry, you can never get mad, because ultimately that's what we're all there for. We're all there to make an incredible movie, and we're all killing ourselves to do it. And so whatever it takes, and we all have 100% faith that that's what Peter is creating.
Is Peter Jackson, in fact, arachnophobic?
Is he? I think I heard that. Terrified. That's good. Sissy.
It was told to us early on that Peter was an arachnophobe, which I thought was pretty funny, because he was really excited about the Shelob sequence.
So Peter started thinking about, what he had always feared in spiders and what made him cringe.
And basically, I wanted to create a scene that scared the hell out of me.
We ended up getting this really gorgeous, detailed maquette that had been sculpted up and cast in the workshop. In film 3, we had latched onto some new scanning technology that we hadn't used in either films 1 or film 2, which is being offered by a company in Canada. We sent the Shelob maquette across to them. The level of detail that they were scanning to was way beyond anything I'd seen before. They were scanning like 10 times more detail than we'd been able to scan ourselves. And the scan we got back was phenomenal.
So we scanned it and got Shelob looking like this old, decrepit creature, but still not a real spider.
The last thing we want it to look like is a big CG spider. So you have to try to figure out ways to tweak things around a little. Shelob had, I think, 12 layers of texture on her. I mean, it was just all sorts of layered upon layer to help sell the leatheriness, the slimy skin, the pussy pores, just all the different kind of material properties over the skin.
Things like that are subtle little clues that you don't necessarily consciously pick up on, but subconsciously you really kind of can perceive that this thing is a big creature versus something that's a little small thing that they tried to kind of make look big.
Once we got the look of it going, then it became the motion of this spider.
We had to do a lot of research on how a real spider would move and how Shelob might be different.
I wanted to somehow capture that speed but not make it look too fast, because when you're dealing with a big object like Shelob, it can look very unnatural if that moves too quickly. So we just had to do a lot of experimentation to find the right degree of speed.
What Peter wanted was a real sense of intelligence behind what Shelob did.
So Shelob basically has to move like a spider and perform like a diva.
Julian Butler put the animation controls into the model that he got from the model department, and we put our animation on the puppet that we got from him in the creature department. We would, look at what was happening in the plate and try to match our Shelob to what was being done by Sean Astin in the plate. So from there, we would really quickly just block out the shot. We would just move Shelob wherever she needed to be in the frame, and then animate her body to what Sean Astin was doing. If Sean was swinging a sword like that, have her move over here and just animate her body the way it should go.
And then Peter thought, well, why don't we just up the ante a little bit? So he came up with this idea of having Shelob drive Sam up the wall of the cave and fight up with her up on top of the wall for a while, and then flip down her back and roll down before he is able to grab the sword and stab her.
The first part of that shot was all digital double Sam. Chris George did a great job of this 3 or 4 frame transition between my Sam and the real one that Even now, I can't really tell where the handoff is. So he fooled me.
When we started looking at the destruction of Barad-dûr, in order to make that believable, the scale really becomes important. This was a tower that was, something like close to a mile high. And so there was no practical way to build a miniature at that size or to shoot it at that scale to make it believable.
We need to feel that it's falling and really feel the massive, pieces coming through and crumbling and hitting and falling. And I think everyone started to see that it's going to be really hard to get this to be a practical model.
I said to Weta, look, we should be thinking about trying to do this as a digital tower, because at least then we can control it. We can have it collapse exactly as we want. And Gray Horsfield at Weta, one of our technical directors and modelers, he just single-handedly spent his entire Christmas break building the digital Barad-dûr.
I actually said at the beginning of the film 3, it's going to be easy, it's going to be fine, it's just one shot. Little did I know.
Ray decided that he didn't need a break. So he talked the support guys into setting him up with a workstation at home, and he had 2 or 3 photographs of the miniature, but very little to go on.
I started it at the point where Weta broke for Christmas, and it was basically 2 weeks of 18-hour days and 7-day weeks, and lots of frustration.
We all came back after the 2-week break, and Gray turns up with a hero digital model of Barad-dûr with something like 800,000 custom handcrafted poly faces. That was just like, wow, did you sleep at all during that 2 weeks? Did you ever leave the workstation? It was like a feat of modelling that may never be surpassed.
It wasn't so much that the model could be built or could be made to look real, but it was that in order to have a mile-high tower collapse, it involved simulation that previously had never been done and it hasn't been possible. It actually goes against the way a computer naturally wants to think.
He was so into this sequence and to make it work as well as it did. And he put all his effort into it and really did a stunning job.
We had just finished up the last shot of the Barad-dûr sequence, and I was done on the show. I think there's maybe only a couple more days left in the schedule. And I was just up talking to one of the coordinators, and somebody came in and said, "Hey, you doing anything?" And I was like, "No, not really." So, you want to give us a hand? I'm like, "What? Kill Gollum?" Yeah!
I still think that Gollum is such a Hollywood. He's such a little drama queen, and I don't feel like he's dead. He became a real character to me.
Yeah, the shot of Gollum falling into the lava was the first shot Peter gave us on Return of the King, and almost the last one to finish. It had to be just right, and so we spent months and months just working out the performance. We had Andy do a bit of the performance for us.
On the motion capture stage, I shot numerous versions of the dance of joy tumbling backwards, the ground giving way beneath.
But ultimately, it became an animated performance because there was no way you could motion capture anything like that kind of a fall. Despite all the technical challenges, and it was a really difficult shot to do because of the chasm and the lava and everything that needed to happen, the most important thing was Gollum's performance.
How does he die? And what's his last expression? And what is the last moment that we're spotting? Is it his mouth? Is it his eye? Is it, what is it?
And originally, we'd storyboarded him screaming and his skin, starting to burn and stuff. But when it came down to doing the shot, Pete sort of said, look, no, we're not going to have him writhing around in pain. He's not thinking about the fact that he's burning up at this moment. He's thinking about the fact that the rings betrayed him. And that's the sort of the driving thought behind his reaction.
It was definitely good, good call, I think, but difficult to portray. I mean, he's thrashing around the lava, and yet he's having this very introspective moment. So somehow, had to try to get this across, and took the facial expressions and pared it down a bit, made it a bit more subtle, made it a bit more introspective.
And I think that maybe biologically that's not right, but poetically it is.
He's been a part of you for this whole ride. It's like, how can you just say like, oh, well, they need help killing Gollum, I gotta go. You gotta jump in there and kill Gollum. It's like you always kill the ones you love, right?
thought it would be good for everybody to be able to see their work on the big screen. So we decided to do every month a screening of everybody's, final shots.
Monthlies are a way of taking a look at all the work that was done on the film for the entire month, so the whole crew can see what was going on and just kind of get a feel for what everyone else has been up to and where it's going.
All their work, they could finally see it on film, and then you could hear their reactions if they saw, a fell beast flying through, one of their miniatures or whatever. You'd hear certain sections of the room light up in applause because they were just so jazzed to see their work.
Hey! Hi, Mom! What about us? Hi! It's over! For the last monthly review we had, it was huge. We had, it was about 800 shots, and it went for 45 minutes.
So I think that was when it was kind of sad that it was all over, because it was, you were there with a lot of people that had worked really hard, on the same project, just so many creative artists. And Peter gave a great speech.
I'd just like to obviously thank you all very much. Thank you, such a pathetic thing to say after all the work that everybody's put in, and, it's for me, these films have been a dream come true as well. I've just been dreaming and thinking about visual effects since I was about 7 years old, and and I have to say quite truly that the work and the shots that I've been seeing over the last few months have just blown me away. I've just been so excited and actually in complete awe of the quality of the work, because even following the first two films, this third movie has just had such a quantum leap. It's incredible, and it's a wonderful situation now because we all know what we've just been through and what we've done, but the rest of the world doesn't, and there's this kind of great kind of anticipation that I have now. Wait till they see this.
I was actually getting chills through the whole thing because I'm looking at these shots, and I think I didn't quite realize what we did, because you get so tunnel visioned in when you're working on these things.
When you saw that stuff go up on the screen on that last, big monthly presentation, you were like, man, we did do it. We did finish all those shots. I'm getting a stomachache thinking about it. We actually did finish.
People loved it. People were clapping and howling, and seeing all the shots, the final shots, they'd gone in so quickly, no one had really gotten a chance to really see everything.
Not only were the shots big shots, they were ginormous shots. Every shot that was on that screen at monthlies was like, wow.
People are freaking out. The word is, after on the street afterwards was, the world has no idea what's about to be unleashed upon them. They have no idea that this is going to come out and they're going to see this amazing body of work, And everybody was just flying high that night.
And so when we came out, it was like a big secret. You're not allowed anyway to show the world your pictures, but you really do. It's like you want to get out your baby pictures, Look.
The team that's evolved at Weta Digital has just been fantastic. It really feels like in the last film, everyone on the crew was just working to their peak abilities. It's taken a lot of effort, a lot of heart, a lot of creativity, a lot of technical knowledge, a lot of pretty much anything you can think of to make it work has come together in this one place.
He's a good animator, though.
It's a facility-making project. People are talking about Weta Digital now as one of the top few handful of visual effects facilities in the world because we've had this great show to build the facility on.
It's unbelievable what everybody went through to finish this film, and after it was all over, I talked to people and I said, well, you probably hate me and you'll never come back again, and they said it was the best time they ever had.
There was so much passion for this movie, and to get this movie done and make it look as good as possible, that nobody quit. There was just so much love for it. An obsession. Everybody was obsessed.
Oh, that's great! We all had to believe that the guy who'd made, the splatter films could then do a David Lean meets Ray Harryhausen extravaganza of a type that had never been achieved before. And if you'd known him then, I think you would have believed it too.
We don't need the awards to tell us. You sit and you watch a shot, and sometimes it brings tears to your eyes because it is so rewarding. The results are there on screen, and they're there for all time. And so, the crew definitely pulled together because they knew that they were working on something that was spectacular and that they'd always feel proud of.